To me, and I want your reaction, the mainstream media coverage of the Russian invasion of Ukraine has been portrayed along the lines of a kind of holy war between good and evil. How do you see it?
Yeah, and I want to just throw in that I was in Eastern Europe in 1989 as a reporter, so I covered the collapse of the Soviet bloc in Eastern and Central Europe and the demise of the Soviet Union. There were two universal assumptions. One, NATO had been rendered obsolete. NATO was designed to prevent Soviet expansion into Eastern and Central Europe. And two, any expansion of NATO beyond the borders of a unified Germany was an unnecessary and foolish provocation of Russia. In fact, Gorbachev was reaching out to try and build an alliance, a security alliance between Europe and Russia. And yet, this understanding, and it was across the political spectrum. Henry Kissinger, George Kennan, everyone understood this, was violated, and it was violated because refitting Soviet bloc countries with NATO military equipment was a multi-billion-dollar bonanza. So NATO was expanded despite frequent protests by Moscow. And then there was an agreement with the Clinton administration that NATO troops would not be stationed in Eastern and Central Europe, and this was violated. And we talk about Ukraine, I think whether there's 13 or 14 former Soviet bloc countries that are now part of NATO. We talk about Ukraine as not being part of NATO. That's a bit of a subterfuge because they're a de facto part of NATO, given all of the military equipment that NATO has supplied to the Ukraine, coupled with military advisors. I think there were 150 NATO advisors in the Ukraine before the war. And now there's been this explosion of weaponry that have been shipped in from Europe and from the United States. I think close to $1 billion just from the US alone. Germany has lifted its ban on the exporting of weaponry and then said it will almost triple its defense budget, and then use 2% of GDP for defense, which will make Germany the third largest military power in the world after Russia, after China and the United States. So it's extremely foolhardy. I wrote a story in ScheerPost where I quoted a 2008 WikiLeaks cable written out of Moscow that warned that this would bait Russia into a conflict, and the flashpoint would be the Ukraine. So it was kind of like Gabriel Garcia Marquez's book, Chronicle of a Death Foretold. Everyone knew where it was moving, but try and provide that kind of historical context within the mainstream media, and of course you're shut out. Because it is, you're right, it's all emotionally driven. It's about self-adulation. I mean, I guess after 2 decades of committing egregious war crimes in the Middle East, now we suddenly get to feel that we're the moral arbiter of the world. And I just want to be clear, I condemned at the inception the invasion of Ukraine, a preemptive war under post-Nuremberg laws, as a criminal war of aggression. Whether Russia was baited or not is not relevant. But our preemptive wars, Putin has a long way to go before he matches the war crimes that we carried out in countries like Iraq, Syria, Libya, and Afghanistan.